Sit back and imagine this for a second. You're a smooth-talking, sharp-suited Italian real estate investor. You're worth millions, and you've used your world-class negotiation skills to secure deals with the likes of Ronald Burkle. You're dating Anne Hathaway, one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. The public loves you, the rich respect you. But behind closed doors, everything is different. Because in reality, you're no different from a street hustler, a con man on the biggest stage, able to distort his lies to unimaginable proportions. You use your righteous and noble background to deceive everyone, even those you love, in the pursuit of wealth. And in this video, we'll peek behind this curtain of deceit and show you how Raffaello Follieri was able to con the world out of $2.4 million. To do this story justice, we actually need to start all the way back in 1978 in Foggia, Italy, to be precise. Because this is when Raffaello Follieri was born. And let me tell you, he wasn't exactly born into the setting you might expect of a future con artist. Because, by all accounts, Follieri was born into a devout, middle-class Catholic family. From a young age, he was raised on Christian values and ideas, those of trust, honesty, and integrity. Follieri's family was also in the property development business, with which Follieri would quickly grow an affiliation. He shadowed his dad from a young age, gaining a key understanding of how to win people over in business and find the best market opportunities. This mix of religion and property investment planted a grand dream in the young brain of Follieri to travel to the land of opportunity, America, and start a property renovation business whereby he would buy old church properties and renovate them into something profitable, like a luxury apartment block. And, armed with Italian charm and charisma, a story people would flock to, and years of experience in the property space, Follieri decided to live his dream and travelled to New York in his early 20s. When he arrived at the Big Apple, Follieri didn't exactly have much going for him. He had little money, no connections, and no reputation. However, he did have a story, and one hell of a good one at that. And, coupled with his charisma, he devised a plan to use this story to attract the investment and business connections he lacked. The plan was simple. Follieri would meet up with potential property investors and tell them how he travelled from the Catholic land of Foggia to provide these investors with an opportunity. You see, Follieri would go on to say that he was the official Vatican liaison for holy real estate in America, and that they could buy land owned by the Catholic Church through him for bargain prices. The American investors ate this story like candy because it all sounded very real. Follieri kept ceremonial robes in his office. He employed 2 clergymen, and every suit he wore came embroidered with a golden crucifix. The story became so believable that literally no one even questioned its validity, which is exactly what Follieri wanted. Drunk on the stories Follieri would tell, and the supposed immeasurable returns he was going to give in exchange for their investment, investors began draining their wallets for Follieri at every opportunity. As he began gaining more investment, Follieri's profile only gained more traction, leading to more investment and more exposure in a vicious money-making cycle. Follieri gained yet more traction in 2004 when he started dating Hollywood actress Anne Hathaway. Dating Hathaway put Follieri into the celebrity businessman category, making him even more popular with investors. And within months, he had more investment than he could ever dreamed of. Even the likes of billionaire Ronald Burkle invested in Follieri's story. Now, at this point, you might expect me to start detailing all of the land Follieri subsequently purchased and the returns he was able to generate for his investors. However, there was one slight problem. It was all a lie. Sure, Follieri might have been born in Italy. He very well may have been a devout Catholic. But one thing that he was not was an official representative appointed by the Vatican. And one thing he couldn't do was buy land owned by the church at a discount. The whole thing was a sham. And instead of buying land, Follieri used the money of others to fund the kind of lifestyle that you or I could only dream of living. A $37,000 a month apartment, clothes with 5-figure price tags, private jets, you name it, he indulged in it. At his peak, he was reportedly spending over $50,000 a month. And for years, Follieri got away with it. He lived the life he always wanted to, kept suspicion at the door, and used his story to attract increasingly greater investment. However, in 2008, almost out of nowhere, everything would come crashing down for Follieri. Now, before we get into just how crazy things get, if you haven't already, please pound that subscribe button. It's completely free and it'll help prevent scammers from robbing you of your entire life savings. So please, do yourself a favour, subscribe, or be scammed. You see, when you take people's money, they're going to come knocking on your door to get it back, especially when you do business with the likes of Ron Burkle. And in 2007, Burkle, growing more impatient to see a return on his investment, decided to dig deeper into the company he had invested in. And what his accountants found was shocking. You see, instead of receipts for land and real estate, they found Follieri's personal rent bills, shopping sprees, and luxury holiday expenditures. There was no evidence that he was actually purchasing church real estate like he had promised to the investors who poured millions into Follieri's company. So, in 2008, Burkle's own company, UKAPA, filed a civil lawsuit against Follieri on the basis of misusing investor funds. This very public lawsuit piqued the interest of the IRS and the FBI, who began their own investigation into legitimacy of Follieri's wealth. And looking behind the facade, likewise, opened their world up to some incredibly daunting findings. When interviewing his employees, for instance, the FBI found that Follieri had never spoken to anyone from the Vatican. All of the contact with the Vatican representatives he had claimed was fake, as were the bank records, wire transfers, and company ledgers. So, for the next few months, the FBI began compiling all the evidence that they needed to expose Follieri's businesses for the fraudulent enterprise that it was. And finally, armed with the truth, on the 24th of June 2008, federal agents arrested Follieri in his luxury apartment in the Olympic Tower, where he ironically stood in silk pajamas, completely unaware of the mountain of evidence stacked against him. Faced with the truth in front of a judicial system, Follieri had nowhere to run and no way to cover his actions. Blinded by the bright lights of the truth, he was charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 6 counts of wire fraud, and 5 counts of wire fraud. For these crimes, Follieri served 4 years in prison. Hatheway also parted ways with him, disgusted by the actions he had committed. After serving his prison sentence, Follieri was deported back to Italy, where he apparently rekindled his connection with God. He also attempted to start other property redevelopment businesses. And to be fair to him, he managed to achieve success on the right side of the law. He's built a new portfolio in the energy sector with projects in Italy, Greece, and the Middle East. Sure, he's probably not making enough to fund a $50,000 a month lifestyle, but considering he had to start from square one, it's still pretty impressive. Ultimately, the story of Raffaello Follieri goes to show you just how much you can get away with if you're a good enough liar. With a simple lie, he was able to fund a lifestyle that most can only dream of. However, compared to the lies that Barry Hunt, aka Jonathan Firestone, was willing to commit to fund his lifestyle, Follieri actually looks like a pretty honest guy. Check out the video that's popping up on the screen now, and I'll show you what I mean.